I wonder if there's any kind of social effects right now in China, particularly related to what you were just talking about, love, and among young people, and if there's any issues that young people are having getting out there, so to speak, and meeting other new people, finding love, or just kind of something that you've noticed happening.
I can't speak actually from a very precise way because I just lost contact with the young Chinese people. And for you, you might think that I'm actually in my hometown, but for me, I think I'm actually in alienation and I'm actually in exile. I can't give you a very precise and detailed answer, but I can speak on behalf of myself when I'm thinking reflectively. Um, you asked me the impact of the COVID and also how it impacts our relationships with each other. I would say, first of all, from a materialized view, that is, people just don't feel secured. There's an incredibly increase, incredibly increased feeling of insecurity. Um, I don't want to use young people as an example, but rather use my parents. They have an incredible feeling of insecurity about their pension scheme, house mortgage, housing price, because in China we don't have a very good social scheme, so a pension scheme, and therefore people actually in China using buying properties in order to save money or in order to do it as an investment, like you pay money for your social security. But one day, of course, not one day, but currently the housing price is declining in China, which means the pension, indirect pension, are declining. And also there are changing social health care system and there are reforms. Not people are just not quite sure what these reforms are going to lead or end about. And also resources, children education, resources about child's education, kindergarten, primary school, middle school, and it's getting more and more expensive. People are feeling more and more insecure and insecure about their future, not only about their future, but also about their children's future. And speaking about the young generation in general, I just assume if those things that I observed are not merely individual cases, but also quite common in China, it could be result in a way that young people are more and more not willing to get married or to give birth. And also, they would like to meet, they want to feel secure most, feel secured first and foremost before they can do anything else. For instance, awareness of something, some social science, awareness of their self, awareness of love, etc. Which means what they are seeking in relationship, first of all, I would assume, is not caring of others, or, but rather caring for themselves. And in that way, they are seeking satisfaction from the things that they can never be satisfied. Because if you want to feel secured, first of all, you want to secure your inner self. You want to make sure that young panic child, which had lived through the COVID, is um, is no longer trapped in that period. But you can't release or you can't I don't know how to say it. You just can't see yourself in the mirror because whatever you see in the mirror is is something else. You must see yourself in yourself with yourself, which means you can't see yourself in anyone's eyes. You just can't find love in anyone's eyes. You have to find love in yourself's heart and in your own mind. And therefore, I would say about young relationships, people are getting more and more less serious about each other, and just huge change of family structure. And it's not only related to COVID, but also relates to one-child policy. The one-child policy has created a massive change in Chinese family structure. That is such a huge decentralization that people have not been aware with. Um, Also related to Chinese New Year. When you ask me the question, what do I like most when I celebrate the Chinese New Year? I was just thinking all the celebrations was gone. It could never and will never come back because there's huge family structure that we used to celebrate together when the elder was still here. I just can no longer be the case. I do not have any siblings, and my parents have very limited siblings. And presumably in the next generation, some of us are never going to have child anymore, and some of us probably, if they can have more several children, those children will be developing a totally different environment, totally different society comparing to ourselves. And therefore, the traditional Chinese New Year was celebrated in the way that based on huge family structure, traditional value, farmer-son relationships, all those things have been changed and could never come back, could never come back. So um, relates to also talking back to the to youth relationships. I would say it's just so different. It's it's going to be in a dialectic movement.
Listen, when you were talking about, well, okay, kind of this wider social trend in the U.S. and in Western Europe, I would say, is the rise of this OnlyFans concept, and pornography has really taken off. Um, and part of me, when you were talking about the effects of COVID and this angst that young people have, and this mistrust, um, part of me wondered if that can explain kind of the rise and use of these, what I would call, internet relationships, where you don't have to do anything and you can imagine yourself having these intimate relationships just from your room in the dark or from your bed without having gone outside. And I know you've thought a lot about philosophy of love and theories of love and such. And I wondered if you had any opinions about why these such things have really taken off, and what explains um, why, I guess, you know so many people have turned to it. And I think too, like your point about the objectification of others is very pertinent to this phenomenon for sure. But I'm wondering if you have any other thoughts. As you eat a cracker, you can think about it. I mean, is there even OnlyFans, like, is something like OnlyFans even allowed in China? No.
OnlyFans is not allowed, officially allowed in China, but I think just a few days before, some people discover they can visit OnlyFans website without special techniques. But though this kind of those kind of format do not officially exist in China, it had been unofficially existed before COVID. I think it's I don't I don't know much about these online content materials and those creative creative stuff, to be honest.
Sure, but it plays into kind of a wider theme of
Yes, there are similar schemes in China. We call it as 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 as, as, um, as Buddhist prostitute, I would say. Yeah, because they're creating content in a way that Buddhist has reached um what's the name of that in English? Like they can no longer they can no longer suffer. Like for the Buddhists who reached that kind of state, but rather than go, yeah, yeah, like enlightenment. When they are enlightened, but they want to save more people, they become Buddhistavia. And in China, and also Buddhistavia used to be a male phenomenon in India, but it has changed into a female phenomenon in China. So when you visit those temples in China, when you see a Buddhistavia, it's always depicting a female figure. So sometimes people in China will name those people who public creative contents of their body and of other things, publish them online, but as Buddhistavia prostitute, not Buddhist
but
prostitute. Sorry.
even I mean even just beyond the specifics of this in China. I mean, what are your thoughts on the rise of, because there's a lot of stats out there that young people are increasingly lonely, uh, that they're increasingly not having relationships, that increasingly obviously usage of pornography and stuff like, I mean, I think OnlyFans at this point is basically pornography, but maybe that's something people would disagree with. But it's the kind of the use of external online sites to fill the void of otherwise meaningful relationships. Do you have any opinions on why that's the case? I mean, I know you do because you tweet about it. Them, you tweet about pornography, so I know you have opinions. So that's why I wanna hear.
You're putting me on a very hard position because I do have opinions, but it's very hard for me to say. But still, I want to touch on a very specific area that is pornography. Um, when I was thinking about pornography, and as you said, if OnlyFans is a genre of pornography, not a specific genre, but a general genre, and people are alienated not only with others, with their friends, classmates, etc., due to COVID, due to the change, the digital reform, but also with themselves as they feeling bored. In that case, their relationship with pornography, I would say, not as an industry, not as a specific genre, but as pornography per se, is a twofold domination. And also, people have touched upon the topics of genre and of pornography, like the male gaze or male domination in the industry. Also, how the producer and how the relationship between the producer and the actor are so unbalanced and so unfair, etc. But I'm not talking about those specific relations in pornography, but between pornography and the receiver. And I was thinking, the receiver, for instance, if I go to OnlyFans, how to pronounce OnlyFans. I I would choose. I don't use OnlyFans, but I would say Pornhub. If I go to Pornhub and choose a specific genre like uh gold hair, Asian or threesome, etc., those are quite, I mean, basic types. There are also more hardcore types that is more extreme. When people are getting more addicted to a substance, they want the lower addiction can the lower level the lower dose can no longer satisfy them. Probably they'll go to some extreme genre. But I'm not talking about the addictive behavior or addiction per se, but rather talking about pornography. People are choosing those genre types and because they do have an influence and dominance on that. If one type or one genre can no longer satisfy the mass, the receiver just abandon that and choose a new genre. Just like how people abandon marijuana and choose heroin, or people abandon the heroin and choose cocaine. I would assume the similar thing would happen in pornography. And therefore people are dominate people for this receiver, they are in a dominant position because they do have the ability to choose. And also for the pornography, they they dominate the receiver because they have changed their the waves as the way they wave their the neurons in their mind or this biological structure in their mind in a way that the receiver is not aware. And also because the receiver gained sexual knowledge, probably also knowledge about relationships, knowledge about how to start a erotic or how to maintain an erotic relationship from pornography in general. The pornography dominate the receiver just like how the media dominate us, because we've been fulfilled with those informations that we are not allowed in a very passive way by algorithm or by algorithm or by something else, by selection. And therefore it's a two-form domination. And speaking from that perspective, um, that's so weird. Speaking from that perspective, that twofold domination, I would say the OnlyFans itself, the creator is also dominated, is also in a position of dominance and also in a position of submission. So in that way, if the content that they created can no longer satisfy their receiver, and I believe in most of the case it's is the case. Like the only top 1% or top 0.5% are really making fortune from this industry. And also people are using AI and other technologies to change this industry. I think it's beyond this podcast. I think this that scope is beyond the podcast. But what I want to say is they are also living in the fear and angst because they fear because they're just afraid they will lose the receiver. People are no longer interested in them, and therefore they are creating the content in a way that they are not aware. They are just alienated from themselves. I'm talking about the content
Right,
creator.
right. So if I could just kind of try to understand what you're saying
Yes,
is saying it's not just the users who feel alienated and angst and feeling like they're not able to go out and have relationships, but it's also the
the creator.
creators who feel like I'm not worth enough, or I'm not worth on my own to just go out and talk to people, so I need to like shape myself in a way that not literally shape, but like present myself in a way that is just overly sexualized in order to like sell and that to like prove that I'm worthy.
Um, Yes, in one way, it is the case that the creator w- are not so secure that they can still be popular and to shape their body and their expressions in a way that can be more creative or more attractive. But it doesn't necessarily mean that their inner self is alienated from their emotions or their awareness. Because some people probably are just um, because each individual is different from each other. I assume some people, I know this is going to be hugely controversial, but it's just my assumption. I assume some people naturally gain pleasure from from being in a popular position or being exposed to a mass audience or being perceived, being being prayed or being whatsoever by as much audiences as possible. So probably in a way that they are not alienated from themselves because that's the true expression of themselves. But I think that is not a universal phenomenon. Just like not every not everyone of us would like to stand in the center of the stage. There are I just assume there are some, or probably many, creators that do not want to express their body, their bodily exposure, or their inner self, like how they want to be treated, how they want to be gazed at, how they want to be understood in the way that they are created in that content. So I think we can't be too indicative or too extreme in this scenario because it's um, it's just about human nature, and I am not. I still would like to study and do more research on that topic if I can go to a graduate program. But from my understanding now, I just think it's not the case. It's not completely the case, but it's definitely the case for the receiver, I think.
So it's not. It's definitely the case the receiver feels angst and anxiety and
Yes.
whatnot, but you're not. You think it's possible that the creative feels that, but you're not certain.
Yes, I would not sure. I would say probably most of the creator are in the case because first of all, only the very top, like 5 or 1% of the content creator can really make a profit. And second, the industry is also ever changing. That there are new ways to making them popular, get more exposure. And for those people like the mass creator, they are actually falling behind. They do not have the resource, have the energy, and or they even don't know how to make them um, more popular. So I think that's most of the case for the creator, but definitely not the absolute case.